everyone. Welcome back to another continuing education check-in. Today, Sania and I were talking about Project Boys and why do girls like Project Boys so much? And we're introducing a new end segment at the very end that I'm really excited about. We're calling it Boyfriend Girlfriend Material. And so we've prepared a couple of different situations, and then I'm gonna say if they're girlfriend material, and Sonia's gonna say if they're boyfriend material. If they're really exceptional, they can be husband and wife material. But you can look forward to that. I'm pretty excited. So to get us started, how would we define a project boy?
Well, as I'm such an expert on project boys, I think the best way to define a project boy or even a project girl is like someone who you meet and you like them for their potential. So like, you know, off the bat, like in front of you, they're not like that perfect person, but you feel like they have a few traits that you maybe can't find in other people, and you're willing to and like wanting to invest your time and energy into making them the person that you think they can be in your mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when we're talking about how they're the person or they're not the perfect person right now,
Hmm.
are they what exactly is off? Are they missing deal breakers? Or do they have red flags? Or are we talking about smaller stuff, like rough
Um,
around the edges?
I feel like it could kind of range from like from everything on the list that you just said. Like it could be huge red flags, or it could be just like really small stuff that needs like a quick fix. Maybe they just need a haircut to have their best potential. Or maybe they're like super, super avoidant and they need to learn to like not be so avoidant anymore. Or maybe they like don't even want to be with you. And like that's a project, making them want to be with you.
Really? Okay, so I think it's crazy to call someone who needs a haircut a project boy or a project girl. I think we should, like, going forward, we should say if there's different tiers, right? So you say rough around the edges,
Okay.
like there's a few things that are off. Maybe they need a haircut. And then the
Hmm.
next level is they have at least one red flag.
Okay.
And then the like highest tier is they don't meet your deal breakers. So I
Right.
think what I'm can we say that project boys and project girls fall under the second category where they
Okay.
have at least one red flag?
All
Because a
right.
lot of the examples you just gave are potential red flags.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like that.
Fair enough. I can get behind it.
Okay. And Sonia, in your experience and out of the friends that you have, how many of them like to go after project boys?
Um, I feel like it was definitely a lot more when we were like all younger. I feel like everybody fell into the trap of like just falling in love with someone for their potential. Like not reading the signs that are like, like you say, they're red flags, but literally not reading the signs that are like in front of your face and just like wanting them because you think they could treat you a certain way or because like they have like a trait that you really like. Like let's say they're super nice to wait staff. So you feel like that's going to translate into them being super nice to you
Yeah.
or something like kind of more delusional like that.
Do you think that they do that consciously or subconsciously?
Maybe like, but like, I think it depends on how like checked in with themselves they are. Like I used to do it subconsciously before, but now it's like a very conscious decision that I made. And like, I guess we're gonna get into this as this episode goes on, but I do understand it's not a very good way to be
Yeah,
when you're dating.
that makes sense. So, speaking for the guys out there, I feel like guys go after project girls less in
Mhm.
general. So, I
Mhm.
would say 30% of guys go after project girls.
Okay, that's fair.
But I feel like for you, like for girls, maybe it's the opposite, where 70% of
Yeah.
girls like will go
Mhm.
after project boy.
I think because girls usually have this attitude of like, I think we were sort of talking about this in our past episode too. It's like, maybe they're not like 100% like right there, perfect on paper, but girls are like usually more inclined to be like put in effort and like invest their time and energy into someone, whereas
Yeah.
guys kind of want the package already ready.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm kind of wondering if part of this is because guys mature slower or later than girls. And so in general, like if you're dating people around the same age as you,
Hmm.
plus or minus like a couple years,
Hmm.
uh, I feel like girls are in general are just gonna have less mature options,
Yeah.
and guys are gonna have more mature
Hmm.
options when it comes to dating,
Hmm.
and it just makes it easier for guys to find someone who has more of what they're looking for because they're more mature and grown up, while
Hmm.
girls are gonna have a harder time.
Yeah. I think I agree with that. I feel like it also has to come to, like the self-maximizing stuff that we talk about, where, typically a guy is like, I've already put the work in on myself, et cetera, et cetera. And like, I want the person in front of me to be great. And if they're
Yeah,
not, like, maybe I'm going to keep my eye out for the next best thing. Girls
yeah.
in general, I think, don't really have that attitude. They're very like, this is who I'm choosing, like, good and bad. Like, we're going to make it work. We're going to improve them or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. I've seen that with a lot of friends that
Hmm.
I have,
Hmm.
and I feel like as a guy, guys in general are so physical, and
Hmm.
physical attraction is so important. While for
Hmm.
girls, not saying that's not important, but girls are way more willing to adjust based on your personality, and if
Yeah.
you've built up some kind of chemistry,
Hmm.
they're more willing to build on that. Whereas a
Hmm.
guy, a lot of times, even if you have the chemistry, the
Hmm.
personality, they'll always like look back to physical attraction,
Hmm.
and that can really stop a guy from pursuing a girl.
That's true.
Okay, well, let's talk about why girls and guys like project dating.
Hmm. I like that term. Well, okay, I guess, have you ever yourself experienced like wanting to project date? Or you said you've mentioned you've seen your friends around you do it. Do you have any ideas on why somebody would want to go, I guess you could almost say the harder route?
Yeah,
Because the person in front of them isn't, maybe they're not fully a green flag, they're not fully ready to be in a good, healthy relationship. So why would
yeah,
somebody put in the effort and the energy to try to, I don't know, make that happen?
yeah. I've done this before, and
Wow.
it's it's tough because what was going through my head was the initial interaction, the chemistry, the physical
Yeah.
attraction, all
Hmm.
of those were right there from the beginning.
Right.
And so
Hmm.
moving forwards for me,
Hmm.
I I this is like a mental thing, but I just
Hmm.
wanted that feeling to continue. That
Right.
I would continue to feel physically attracted, that
Hmm.
we would continue to find things in common,
Hmm.
and that her personality, it would just be more of the same as when I
Right.
first met her. But
Hmm.
what happens is people are not how they are when you first meet them. And so
Right.
as I got to know more about them, they became project girls because
I see.
there were the red flags that came up, but I just ignored them because I just
Okay.
kept looking back to how they were when I first met them,
Right.
and it's like especially like how attracted they are,
Right. Right.
physical, but then also personality.
Emotional. Totally. I
And so
feel
I
like
put
it's,
them in the box.
yeah, no, I feel like
Yeah,
it's totally like a lot of the same, like from my perspective as well. I don't know if it's so much of like, oh, when you first met them, they were so great, but it's kind of like they have certain traits that you really like. And so you just like cling on to those traits for dear life. And you're
yeah,
not really willing to accept the other maybe traits that are not so desirable in them.
yeah,
Like, so anytime, I know a lot of times when I had these Project Boy interactions, you know, as friends and people on the outside looking in, they would often be like, oh, like you should leave him, like da da da, he's not doing this, 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 like a whole list of things. But, as the person who's invested in this project, you keep being like, oh, but like he did this one nice thing for me. Like, remember when he like made sure I got home safe? Like, remember when he did this one thing that like really made you fall for them? And it's hard to get out of like get yourself unstuck from that situation.
yeah. I do want to touch on that a little more.
Hmm.
One thing that I've been thinking about as you've been talking is I feel like if you've been hurt by an ex,
Mhm.
and they have specific red flags, and the
Mhm.
next person that you meet doesn't have those same red flags, like
Yeah.
the weaknesses of the
That
ex are
true.
actually
Mhm.
strengths of the new person, it
Mhm.
can make the new person seem just way better, even
Yeah.
though they might have their own red flags in other areas.
Which are different or even worse. Yeah, I
Exactly.
totally agree with that.
And
It's like
so,
almost your judgment getting a little bit clouded, I
yeah,
feel like.
yeah.
Um, I'm not sure why that happens exactly. I know
Hmm.
like speaking from personal experience and maybe like some of my friends relate to this. I feel like sometimes we feel like because boys are always out there to self-maximize, I feel like sometimes we think that if we are investing all this time and energy into someone, that the likelihood of them wanting to leave is less, or that
Whoa,
they'll
whoa,
love you
whoa.
more for it.
You can't say all boys are out there to self-maximize.
Okay,
That is
fine. Let's
crazy.
let's take the self-maximizing out of it. But in general, you know, it feels like I don't know, girls tend to usually be more anxious in a relationship. And it almost feels like, oh, if we're taking someone that's already off the bat, like not amazing, not perfect, then maybe they'll be a little bit thankful or grateful to like that you're spending this time and energy on them because maybe nobody else had because everybody saw this project as like, oh, red flag. Like, I don't want to even get into that.
Yeah.
And so you almost feel like, okay, like you're going through this harder situation, you're going through these trials for this person and like hopefully to come out in the end and like have them appreciate you more for it or have them like you more for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I
Because
think
you like
that,
them when they were unlovable themselves, kind of, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think the reason why you you're so focused on the weaknesses of your ex is
Hmm.
because when you're dating your ex and things are really bad because of their red
Hmm.
flags or deal breakers,
Hmm.
I think subconsciously we think that those are the most important factors. The relationship
Hmm.
or relationships in general, they're not going to
Hmm.
work out if the next person has the same weaknesses. And that's
Hmm.
why when we're looking at the next person or talking to the next person, those are what we're so focused on because those were the issues from the last relationship.
Right. Hmm.
And so I guess that leads us to how do you know when you're being a little delusional and you're not thinking clearly and you're not thinking about all the other red flags?
Hmm. I honestly wish that I had a very clear answer for this, but I feel like my best advice would be an advice that you give a lot on the podcast, which is to just lean on your friends a little bit. You know, if you've been trying to fix this project and like make him into the perfect boyfriend for you for like over a year and like he is not showing signs of improvement or like, she doesn't look like she wants to change at all. Um, I feel like, a lot of time invested is like a good sign to be like, okay, I'm not getting anything returned in this investment. So maybe like right now is like a good time to take a step back and maybe this project is not going to come to fruition and it's not going to turn out the way you want it to. And so a lot of times your friends are the ones that can pull you out of the delusion versus like, they can see like, oh, you're right. When you started talking to so and so, he like never texted you and now he calls you every day. Like it's actually working. Like you're making a positive change.
Yeah, I love that. Getting your friends involved. Sometimes that can be hard if your friends don't know the person that you're talking to or seeing.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so getting them involved, letting all of you guys hang out together, that will
Hmm.
allow them to give that feedback. I think
Hmm.
that if you don't have friends like that or your friends are not involved at this
Hmm.
stage,
Hmm.
it's important that you do a little bit of self-reflection at this point.
Hmm.
And so looking at yourself and on a scale of like maybe 1 to 10, measuring how anxious you are.
Right.
Or
That's
maybe how
super true.
anxious you feel about the relationship this week.
Hmm.
And then
Right.
uh, write down what is causing you to feel happy or unhappy,
Hmm.
and then doing some self-reflection to figure out, well, am I feeling unhappy in this relationship because of a red flag, or is
Hmm.
it because of a one-time thing?
Hmm.
And then I think it's important if it is a red flag or this is a repeated thing that is making you anxious or unhappy to talk
Hmm.
to the other person about it, especially if you're at the dating stage and
Right.
see how they respond.
Hmm.
And but I think keeping some kind of journal or like just a self check-in is going to help you a lot because
Hmm.
I think that a lot of times anxiety slips under the rug and it's
Yeah.
always under the surface. It makes you feel anxious, but
Yeah.
you're not super aware of it in the moment
Hmm.
because you're just focused on all the good things.
That's true. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. And I think this strategy helps a lot because when you're project dating, you're only focused on the good things.
Hmm.
And we're not saying that it's important to focus on the bad things because that can make you a very negative person,
Yeah.
but it's important to think about what has been bad and
Hmm.
figure out like is this a one-time thing? Is this circumstantial?
Hmm.
Is there an actual issue? And that will help sober you up, I think. And for Sanya, like in our Vault episodes, when we've talked about project dating in the past,
Yeah.
the thing that I'm focused on as your friend, Sanya, is what are the red flags? Like I'm focused on the
Yeah.
bad stuff, you're focused on the
Right.
good stuff.
Yeah. It always
Yeah.
turns into like an argument of like we're both on different sides. I feel like even when I've talked to my friends about their project boys, like I think like I feel like it also comes down a little bit to are there bad stuff? Like is the bad stuff that this person in front of you has, is it really taking a toll on you? So for example, one bad thing that you can think of is like a guy who doesn't call or text you very frequently. For me personally, based on my personality and like things I want or don't want in a relationship, that is not a huge deal breaker for me. That is not something that makes me spin my wheels and like keeps me up at night thinking about who else is he talking to if he's not talking to me. But on the flip side, if this was like my other friend and her boy is not texting her or calling her all the time, this does affect her really, really negatively and it like weighs her down and you can see it in like all aspects of her life. So I think another good thing to do is like to check in with yourself and see like, okay, if you're going to be in this situation where you have a project person, you need to make sure that you're not letting them drag you down. You need to be almost, I don't know if stronger is the right word, but you need to be able to like not let their actions affect you so deeply. And if they are starting to affect you very, very deeply, like starting to affect all areas of your life, like how you interact with your friends, your family, your work, maybe that's also a good time to like cut them loose.
Yeah.
I feel like if
So
you're able, like in the past, whenever I've had a success story with a project person, it's usually because, sure, through the ups and downs, I feel like I never fall below a certain baseline. Like it never, the other person's actions never affect, well, some people's actions do, but maybe they don't have those things that like will super destroy me or something like that. So like I'm able to roll with the punches a little bit. Does that make
okay.
sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But do you think that it's actually possible to be successful with a project person?
I Well, you would look at me and you would say no because I am still sitting here single. But I think it is totally possible because I feel like I truly believe this too. I feel like you can tell your friends about any, I don't know, situations that you're like about your relationship, but I feel like because they're not the one in that relationship, because they don't know how that conversation makes you feel, or they don't know. I feel like you can feel when someone's being genuine, and sure, a lot of times maybe you're wrong about it, but a lot of times you're right about it. Um, so I feel like yeah, it can totally turn successful. Um, because like even though from the outside looking in, it looks like oh, like this person's horrible, they're putting you through all these things, like they're not treating you like you should, but they don't know those moments where you feel so, let's say for me, I really like feeling understood. Let's say you feel so understood, it feels like ecstatic. It's like nothing that anybody else has offered. Like, sure, this other person is perfect, checks off all the boxes, no red flags, but you don't get that feeling of like understanding. You don't feel that click. So I do think it's worth it to, if you are feeling something that you haven't found in other people, I do think it's worth it to explore it and to put a little bit of effort into it, as long as it's, like I said, it's not affecting you super negatively. And so, like sometimes it can work out.
Okay, that's I think we need to break that down a little bit and come up with a game plan for the viewers. So
Okay.
most times, if our friend comes up to us and they're in this
Mhm.
situation where they're dating someone with red flags,
Mhm.
I think the most common piece of advice that people would give in this situation is not to date that person, to move on.
Right.
That
Right.
person has is not treating you well. But
Mhm.
you're saying right now that if you see the change and
Yes.
you're saying it's also possible to change them, what is exactly do we propose to our viewers, and what kind of strategy should they do if they find themselves project dating?
Mhm. I think that's a really good question. Um I think like the number one thing, like top priority is you and your mental health and well-being. So the first thing, if you find yourself like, in a situation where all your friends are like, "Oh my gosh, leave him. He's not right for you," and you're adamant on staying, I think you have to like check in with yourself and make sure like, is this person like really, really making me feel bad? And like this could be like a percentage thing. Like, are they making you feel bad 95% of the time? And you're looking for those 5% moments where they're amazing, because then maybe like the odds are a little bit against you. Or maybe it started off with 95 and 5, and then you're putting in like effort and time, and maybe the percentages like kind of get better and more balanced. So I think the second thing would be to see if there's change. Like, and there can't just be change in like their words. It has to be like, are you seeing changes in their actions?
Yeah, I really love that because as we've been talking, I've started to think about how everyone is a project boy or project girl. We're
To some
not
extent,
perfect.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe the red flags that I have is not exactly someone else's red flag that they're
Totally.
looking for,
Mm-hmm.
and that can make us more compatible because my weaknesses are not something that my potential partner is worried about. But
Mm-hmm.
we all have things that are weaknesses. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
like being clean, maybe it's being thoughtful and
Mm-hmm.
planning dates.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's being organized and having our plans on a calendar. And
Mm-hmm.
so everyone has things that they need to improve on. I
Mm-hmm.
genuinely believe in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you said is really good, Sonia. That doesn't mean necessarily you should just get rid of someone because
Mm-hmm.
they have a red flag. It's more important to, if they do have a red flag that is important to you,
Mm-hmm.
to bring it up to them and
Yes.
see if they're willing to change. If they're willing
Mm-hmm.
to change, that means you're with someone who is mature enough to grow with you. But
Right.
if they're not willing to change, I think at
Mm-hmm.
that point you have to be ready to say, I'm gonna step away from this because
That's completely right.
you're subjecting yourself to a really, really long process of
Mm-hmm.
no guaranteed change.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times it's hard, even at the little steps of this, to figure out if you're
Mm-hmm.
doing it the right way because first of all, it's hard to identify the red flags because you're only
Yes.
seeing the good things. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to bring it up to them and see if they're willing
Mm-hmm.
to change. And then it's also hard to observe if they're changing or not.
Right.
And
Yes.
so one way that I think you can approach this without going through that whole process is by asking them questions as you're getting to know them.
Mm-hmm.
What has been something that you've learned a lesson from? Or
Mm-hmm.
what would a younger version of you really be proud of,
Mm-hmm.
um, like of how you've grown to today?
Mm-hmm.
And even asking like their friends, like, oh, how has this person changed?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the key part in all of this is figuring out if this person is willing to admit when they're wrong and also to get better in life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like certain personalities where people can take constructive criticism
Mm-hmm.
and work on themselves, and then
Mm-hmm.
people who don't handle feedback well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as long as they're willing to handle feedback well, that is a very good sign that this
Mhm.
is someone that you can date.
But there's also like the people that are a little bit snaky that will kind of throw you for a loop. I guess that's how I would like to explain them,
Oh
where
yeah,
their actions are not at all matching what their words are saying. So maybe you
yeah,
bring up something that is upsetting you, and they will make note of it. They'll say that they're going to fix it and do better, and then they're just doing more of the same. And so
yeah,
those, like the sweet talkers, are the ones I think that you really, really have to look out for because they kind of never ever set you free. They keep you stuck in this loop of like, expecting and hoping for them to change, and they keep saying they're doing it and they're trying, but you're not seeing any results. You're still feeling the same way you felt before. And I think those are the people that you should be super, super like cautious of. And like I get it, change takes time, but that's why I think, checking in with your friends and like, like you said, Ethan, like journaling about it, like just so that you're not like spending like 10 years on a person waiting for them to change, you know?
yeah. It's so hard with the sweet talkers, and I think one thing that you can do is ask your friends if what you're asking the sweet talker is too much. So
Mhm.
a lot of times what we're asking project people is for them to make small changes, maybe
Mhm.
to close the toilet seat or lower the toilet seat, or I don't know, like make your bed in the morning.
Mhm.
Those are things that anyone can do, and that's a
Mhm.
low bar. And so it's
Right.
important to differentiate, like, have you actually given them something that takes a long time to change,
Mhm.
or is it actually pretty reasonable to do
Mhm.
now? A lot of times it's easy to do now. It's not like
Mhm.
something like giant.
I
Like,
mean, okay, so you brought up examples of small things, but I feel like a lot of my friends that have been stuck in this Project Boys stage, like they're usually asking for a lot. I don't know, you can say bigger things because, like we
mm,
said, people are different, people's red flags are different. So, like, a
yeah,
lot of my friends, especially recently, have been talking about, the boys in their lives. They've been asking them to text them more, to call them more, communicate with them more. And, Ethan, you've been very publicly on this podcast in a position where you were asked to talk to somebody more, and it was really difficult for you. You tried, you made an honest effort, but you just couldn't do it. And you came to terms with that, and you were not fake about it. You did not lead on the other person. You said, hey, you asked for this. I don't really think I'm up for it. I don't think I can give this to you. That was like because you yourself were good at handling it. But let's say, some of my friends, the boys that they're asking for this from, it seems like a very big ask for the guy because he's not used to doing this for anyone. So those things would take longer, I think, for you to see in action. But I think you still need to see like a positive slope. You still need to see an inkling of improvement since like after you brought up this thing that bothers you. You need to see that they even care that this is a thing that bothers you.
oh, definitely. For something like that, if there is no sign of change, it's time to get out of there. Eh,
Mhm.
For something like that, either the person is in or they're out. They're either
Mhm.
willing to talk to you or not. And
Mhm.
there is no really in between. If they're still
Mhm.
being inconsistent with how they're talking, they're not really wanting to talk to you. Like,
Yeah.
I've been on both sides where it was really hard for me to talk to someone. That's
Every day.
that's when
Mhm.
I knew I had to end it. But then there's
Right.
been like people that I've been really excited to talk to and
Mhm.
wanted to keep getting to know better. And that's
Mhm.
how I knew that there is actually something there.
Mhm.
And so this is when you have to remember that there are a lot of fish in the sea. And
Mhm.
just because there's this one person that you really like that doesn't want to talk to you consistently, uh, doesn't mean you won't be able to find someone who
Mhm.
you do like and does want to
Mhm.
talk to you consistently. I
Yeah.
think one thing on this point is that it's sometimes girls want a high level of communication every single day.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then guys, like, they're willing to talk every day, but not
Mhm.
at that high level. And so
Yeah.
maybe the middle ground is hard to judge. Maybe like I go back on what I just said,
Mhm.
and I think at this point, maybe it's not a red flag that, or like specifically like that the guy does not want to communicate or talk to the girl.
Hmm.
Maybe it's just the communication level that you guys are naturally at is different,
Right.
and
It's
maybe
different.
you're not a good fit because of that.
Yeah.
Not because like you don't like each other.
Hmm. And especially if you guys aren't willing to change, both like you both have to compromise.
Yeah.
I think to wrap up sort of this topic, one last little piece of advice that I think is something good to leave the viewers with when they're in these project dating situations is I think you should just always check in with yourself. If they're making you feel more bad than good, then it's time to probably stop that project relationship. You have a confused look on your face, Ethan, but I guess I'm trying to say, let's say they are not texting as much as you like, because that's the example we're using. If it's really taking a toll on you and you're really bothered that it's not improving, that means that that's making you feel really, really bad compared to, let's say, the two or three little gems that you found in them that really makes you like them. If their non-communication is making you feel worse than the goodness that those few little moments of happiness makes you feel, that is a good time to end the project and, like you said, move on to some other better fish in the sea.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to wrap things up. One thing that I will say on my end to wrap things up is it's really hard to do, but you can't think about sunken cost because
Yeah, that's the good
you
advice.
focus on those good things and you're like, I don't want to lose them. The next
Yeah,
guy, like it's gonna be so hard to find these
you
things
have
in
to
the next
restart the
guy.
training.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And
Hmm.
you just can't think that way.
Hmm.
There, I think that that's gonna force you to settle, having that
Hmm.
mindset.
Right.
And just remember that you are worthy of love and you don't want to have to make very tough decisions down the line for yourself. Like,
Hmm.
spare yourself the pain now, not later. Because
Hmm.
later, you don't know if there's marriage involved, if there's
Right.
kids involved. You
The
don't want
sunken
to
cost
subject,
increases.
yes, and you don't want to subject um, other people to the pain. And
Mm-hmm.
so, address these things now,
Good advice.
write it down,
Yes.
talk to friends,
Hmm.
talk to family, and
Hmm.
I don't want to promise that there's that perfect person out there for you, but
Hmm.
there's uh, there probably is.
Hmm.
At least
Okay.
someone who does not have your red flags.
Hmm.
We're gonna wrap this up with our new segment. We're calling this boyfriend girlfriend material, and so I'm gonna read out a situation, and then Sonia and I we're gonna say if they're not boyfriend girlfriend material, if they are boyfriend girlfriend material, or
Hmm.
are they husband wife material? That's the highest level, so three
Hmm.
levels. Okay, the first one is they want to meet your friends over dinner.
So I guess with this one, I came up with this scenario. I'm saying they're the ones initiating and wanting to meet your friends.
Yeah.
Are we? Okay. I think that's all. So are you
Okay.
ready, Ethan?
Yeah, I think you should just go first. Like I don't know
Okay.
how to like do it with names. So
Yeah, that's fair. I would say that I think this makes them boyfriend material. They're taking a genuine like interest in your life. They're wanting to invest time and energy on not just you, but also your friends. And they're making the first, I guess, move, which is a very positive thing. Because a lot of times I feel like people will do this dutifully when you ask your partner, like, hey, my friend's having this thing, like, come with me. That's a different, that still means they're good because they're complying. But I think
yeah,
it's like an extra positive thing if they're wanting to do this.
yeah, it's tough on the guys' side. I would still say that they are girlfriend material. I
Hmm.
agree with you. And it's tough because for guys, they're like, I don't want her to take
Like
away
my
my
friend
guy
more?
time.
Oh,
Oh, no, I was gonna say my guy time. I'm not worried about like
okay.
my friend more. That
Okay.
That you should watch the episode on attachment styles, and maybe you have an anxious attachment style if you think that way, which is okay. But
Hmm. Okay.
don't think
You
like
don't
that,
want them.
guys.
Okay.
Don't
You
like
don't want them
don't
to
start
take
out that
away your guy time.
way. Exactly,
Okay.
uh, and
Like
so I
that. Them always wanting to come when you're hanging out with your guy friends.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
sometimes
get.
you want time with your friends alone and you want to
That's
chop
valid.
it up and you want to talk about your relationship
Yeah.
without your partner around. So
Yeah.
I think
That's fair.
for guys, they think that way.
Uh
So
huh.
I think they are girlfriend material. They can't be too pushy about
Too
it.
much. I agree.
But I think for the guys out there listening, this is a good thing, like Sonia said. It
Hmm.
means not that they want to know your friends better, but really that they want to know you better
Yes.
and what kind of environment and
Yeah.
jokes and topics of conversation make you happy. So
Hmm.
I think that's good. Okay, the next one, they want to take your friend to the airport or pick them up from the airport.
I think this is like husband material. If somebody is offering to not forget about taking you to the airport or picking you up, but if they know that you have a friend coming into town, and we're saying friend right now, you could replace friend with family. And
Yeah.
if they're wanting to do this thing, which we've talked about a lot, taking someone to the airport is like a lot of extra work. And they're wanting to do this for your friend and they're offering, I feel like it goes above and beyond. And it's like, they're wanting to show your friend also like a nice, I don't know, they're trying to be nice to your friend to show how much they love and care about you. That's how I take
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I can see that, but I don't understand it. So I don't understand why your friend who is
Hmm.
going to the airport or coming back home,
Hmm. Hmm.
why they can't find one of their friends to pick them up
Oh,
or drop them
I
off.
guess we're not so much talking about the action of doing it, but it's just them offering and saying like, "Hey, like I know your friend's coming into town. You've been talking about it. Like, why don't we go pick them up from the airport together? I'll go with you."
Oh, I
You
see. So
know,
if you do
it's
it
kind of
together, it's not weird.
yes. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. It's
Okay.
not like you're gonna send your boyfriend as like an Uber to go pick up your friend. It's like
Yeah.
they're offering. They're like, oh, they might have lots of luggage. Like, let me come help. Let me, you know.
Dang.
This could be like this situation could be in anything. Like maybe you have a friend that's moving and your partner's like, "Oh, your friend's moving. Like why don't I come help out?"
Hmm.
Just yeah. I threw out my husband material card on that one.
Wow. Maybe I'm not husband material. I, for me, it would be so hard to offer something like that
Yeah.
because it at that point it's like, am I gonna offer it at every single thing?
Yeah.
And it just feels kind of crazy.
Mhm.
So
I feel like yeah, you do set the bar very high when you do this and then there's a disappointment when every other
yeah,
time it doesn't happen. So I guess
yeah.
yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
So I do think that they are husband or wifey material if they do this, but
Mhm.
I don't know if I would recommend doing this. Like,
Yeah.
I think in certain situations, like you can offer, like maybe my partner's like, oh, my friend, she can't find anyone else, and
Mhm.
uh, her
And you're there
family
to
is
solve
away
a
right now.
problem. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and
Okay.
then like
Fair enough.
maybe the two of you do something together after. Uh,
Mhm. Okay. I can get behind that, I guess.
yeah, the situation just makes me a little nervous in general. It just it takes a lot out of you to do something like that.
Yeah,
You don't
I
want
mean
to
that's
see a
why I
regular
think
thing.
that's why I like it and that's why I'm so like floored by it because it does take a lot. And I
Yeah,
feel like for me it shows like wow, they love you so much that they want to extend this courtesy to not just you but your friend. Like they're looking out for everyone in your life. And so that's why it's so husband material.
cool.
Mhm.
Okay. The next one makes plans with you and your friends and cancels them the day of without good reason.
I mean, I feel like this is a pretty clear one.
Yeah.
This is absolutely not boyfriend material. This is even questionable as friend material. I think if you guys are all in a group and you all make a plan and then you all cancel together, that's one thing. But if he is somebody who's talking to you and knows you, and to earn your favor, he's trying to be friendly with your friends and be like, hey, you guys should come too. Let me make this plan and invite everyone and make everyone feel included. And so he's taking this extra step. And then he has to go back on his word, especially the day of and without good reason. I think it's like better you didn't even try to include my friends in the first place.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So,
totally agree. This says a lot about their personality and
mhm,
not following through on their word. That's huge.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, not girlfriend material. Okay, next one says, I wanted to do this for you, or get this for you, or plan this for you, but doesn't do it.
So, what do you think about actions? I don't know, not matching their words, like false
I,
promises.
I think that this should be a red flag for every single person out there. If the person that you're with, the person that you're talking to, ever falls in this category where they say they're going to do something, they say they want to do something, and they don't
Hmm.
follow through, this is really bad. This is like, you need to bring this up to them and see if
Right.
they're willing to address it. To be
Hmm.
honest, this has happened to me, maybe even in little ways where
Hmm.
they're like, hey, if I get off from work early, can I come over to your place and we can hang out?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
and they're not able to get out of work early. Things come up and they
Right.
don't show up. And
Hmm.
in a situation like that, yeah, I still feel bad, but
Yeah. You just
I
feel let
know that,
down.
yeah. So I think it does depend. Like,
Hmm.
you have to know their intention, but then
Yeah.
also if they it fell through because of circumstances, and if it's just because of circumstances and they're over promising because of things they can't control,
Hmm.
that is more of an issue of, hey, next time don't overpromise if you know things
Yeah.
can come up.
Exactly.
But not necessarily they don't follow through on their word.
Right.
So
And sometimes people have reasons for it, but if
yeah,
it does become like a constant theme and you brought it
yeah,
up
yeah,
and they don't really have a reason for it, yeah, overpromising, totally a bad thing.
definitely. Yeah. You don't want them to ever overpromise on a ring or
Yeah.
overpromise on how to raise a family. Like, those are,
Hmm.
you don't want it to get to that
Yeah,
point.
it's like a bad trait long term.
Yeah. Okay, the last one. They don't talk to you in their time of need. So they're going through family troubles, money problems. They don't tell you.
Um, okay. I'm gonna just start by saying that I think this is not boyfriend material. And maybe you have a different opinion on this, Ethan. I usually do myself have a hard time when I'm going through a tough time, like to communicate it with people. I'm a very independent person. I like to problem solve on my own. But I do understand because I've been in the receiving end of this situation like twice now in my life. And I feel like, if somebody that I'm romantically talking to is going through a difficult time in their lives, and as their girlfriend, as their whatever, they're not wanting to, even just to like talk to me and like empty their bag, like, clear their head, make themselves feel better. Like if talking to me doesn't make them feel better, then like, why are we together? I believe, yeah, relationships should be fun and exciting, but I think it's also there for support. And I think this is one of those moments when you can see the seriousness of the relationship aside from the day-to-day fun and dates. And if they're not reaching out to you in their time of need, like, are you just there for fun? Like, I feel like it shows signs of it not being permanent. It shows signs of it, the whole relationship being really juvenile and like superficial and surface level. And yeah, and so that's why it's like absolutely like super not boyfriend material.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not girlfriend material. The only thing that I'll add is that it is important not to trauma dump on someone. It does
Hmm.
depend on what level your relationship is at
Hmm.
and how much trust there is, how much you're
Hmm.
willing to support each other.
Hmm.
And so if it's early on, I would not recommend going into all the details.
Yeah.
But I think it is, even at the beginning, still helpful to bring up and just say, hey, this is frustrating me.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not
And
going
I
to be
guess,
replying for a while. I'm trying to figure this
yeah.
out.
Hmm. And I guess I more so mean in this one, like about like, a sudden thing that happens, like, a sudden change, a sudden negative impact or something that is happening in your life. Like, I
Yeah,
feel like that even in like the very early stages of like, if you are with the intention of being in a relationship or anything, I feel like you should feel comfortable, I think, to share that. I think it comes down to like there's not comfort and there's not that level of like intimacy to be vulnerable and share this thing that's like sad in your life. And that's really sad. That's not a good, I don't think, healthy relationship.
for sure. Well said. Okay, well, that was our last situation. We'll wrap it up there. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. I think we talked about lots of good things, very, very applicable to
Yes.
dating right now.
A lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. And So we hope you got something out of this, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.